up once or twice in the discussions already. Chris.
Thanks very much. Thanks. So I'm thinking for about 15 minutes, so I'll get cracking. So Ian and I want to share some of our learnings on some of the open innovation offerings we've been involved in and initiatives we've been involved in the last year. I should say the last time I was in this lecture theatre, probably listened to geography quantitative methods or something like that in the classes set in 1976. It used to be as hot and steamy as this as well. Catherine's mentioned, I think we face big challenges globally. And those challenges require a change in the way we tackle them. Global thinking, local action that involve government, private sector, civil society, communities and ourselves. And I think sort of also challenges the way in which we address them changes the way we think. You know, at the moment we have a linear economy rather than a reuse recycling one. I think that's one we're going to have to move to, whether we like it or not, because resources are constrained and have to be reused in the end. So explorations around that are going to be very important, and that's perhaps a backdrop to some of our involvement, of all of us in this room in a sense. So we've got to find different ways of doing things. Fortunately, we also know that no matter who you are, most of the smartest people work for somebody else. So they're out there working for other people, and we now have means of engaging those other people through open, collaborative ways of working. And in fact, Bill Joy's working for somebody else now as well, I think. And it's all done. I was interested in listening to a lot of the points that were raised in the last session, really interesting session, and Javier's points in particular around what are we doing with open innovation, open and open source and open data and so on. And I wanted just to point to this, which will be on the website sooner or later, but it was our sort of learnings, the do's and don'ts of open data from our perspective, which addresses some of our fears and so on. So if you just take one of these, you know, be brave, let people do stuff with your data that you don't expect. But also I think the one I want to concentrate on a little bit is this one. Don't just release data and expect them to create things with it. Publication is not the same as communication. And if you think, no, this is a group of people interested in open data, we may find it easy to get to information, to data, but most people won't. And that's the point we wanted to address in this presentation. And I guess the other point is, maybe you mentioned a little bit before, it's going to be about inventing new business models, not applying old business models for the stuff that's open. So snatch this from Charles Ledbester's book, We Think. We're thinking, well, what are the core components that make open stuff work? And basically, it's those 5 things according to Charles. So, you know, a core purpose that you're trying to achieve, rather than just releasing for a policy purpose. What are you trying to achieve? What needs are you trying to solve? What problems are you trying to address? Contributions to that overall endeavour. In our case here, we explain what sort of contributions we're putting out in an open way. The ability to connect people, ideas, skills, experience, expertise, solutions. Collaborating using those contributions and those connections that are made, but above all, knowing what value you're trying to create from it as well. And I guess we're in that discovery mode at the moment. You know, is it social, economic and environmental? And from Catherine's talk, it needs to be all of those. Is it new and improved processes? So those are the sorts of things we're looking at. And I guess we've got 3 related initiatives to support open innovation. And Ian talked about what those were, 2 of those things, and I'll talk about the last of those things. Thanks, Ian.
Tag team effort. Oh yeah, that's a good point. Well done. Okay, thank you, Chris. Yeah, so we've had quite a lot of higher level discussion so far, so I'm just going to bring it down a few notches just for a few moments. While the point is just to show you what OS has released, and some of you may be aware of this already, and others maybe this might be something new to them. just want to point out there is a there's a sort of drinks reception I think at 5, and that followed by a workshop. So if you want some free drinks on OS and then get to play with some of these pieces of data technology, then please come along. Anyway, right, moving swiftly on. So, like Chris said, we released a whole bunch of open data, and we also have a toolkit that will allow people to access it. These are the data sets we released. They may not mean much to some of you, to others you might know these off by heart. And I'm just going to go through some very quick slides so you illustrate. There are mainly two groups. The top one is really just images that you'll probably use for backdrops and stuff, and the vectors is really data that you can interact with in one form or another, be they points or roads or lines and things like that. So just to illustrate, so you know what these kind of look like. This is what Street View looks like. It's a raster backdrop. It's probably the most detailed mapping we provide as open data. It's sort of a nominal 1 to 10,000 scale. It's been generalized to some extent, but you have building shapes and things like that. It gives quite a lot of detail between the road areas. And it's quite useful for people to their points. And then the next set really are going up different levels of scale, and you may be familiar with some of the cartography of these. So they illustrate different points. So people use these in different contexts, and if they want a map that zooms in, etc. Vector map district is an interesting one. We provide it in a pre-formatted image way, a raster form, but we also provide the vectors so people can style and remove features should they want to display that data in different forms. So you actually have more ability to control this data set, what you want to display. Now the next two sets, really the two in strategy, are actually the road networks. They've been, you get raw data, and this is one that's been stylized, so somebody's coloured the main roads red and motorways blue and things like that. But you get a semi-generalized data at a nominal 1 to 50,000 scale of the road network, Great Britain road network. Similar for strategy, but that's at a much higher scale, so much smaller scale, and so obviously some of the road features will drop out at that level. But then we have code point open, which gives viewing postcodes that will give you the X and Y coordinates. You can run back and forth. Boundary line is also probably a very useful data set, which has been provided part of open data, which provides a whole load of administrative and electoral boundary sets for people to use, going down to ward level. OS locator are sort of center points essentially for roads. Panorama, which is a surface model, which somebody here has displayed as a series of contours, but it is actually a digital elevation model. And this one again is an interesting data set. It's the 150,000 gazetteer. If you're familiar with 150,000 mapping, it's the one with the purple cover, and what's interesting here is it takes the names that are on that map and then gives them a coordinate based on its, I think on the lower left, 1 kilometre, nearest 1 kilometre square grid point. So it's not literally where that text appears, because of course the text has been placed cartographically anyway where it best suited the map. You know, but you have to be aware that sometimes when you get sets of open data, it may not necessarily, you have to understand the source of the data and what the interpretation has been placed on that. So that sort of illustrates that example as well. So people have used this, use these in a number of ways. That you can download this data or have it sent to you on DVD. So here's an example where somebody's taken some OpenStreetMap data and used the code point open to provide a postcode search for this application. And here's somebody who's actually using one of the Vector Map District product to be able to display a map in the colours that they wish to use rather than anything that we might prescribe. So some people may be familiar with the Boris cycle map. So this is using the Meridian road data set, and then somebody's placed the availability of bicycles in the Boris bicycle scheme in London. And so the symbols represent, I think, how many are there and how available they are to be able to be used. So this is just sort of some very basic examples of what people have been able to use. There's some commercial use of open data. So like other people have said before, we don't really, although we can have some idea of where people have downloaded data to, nobody's obliged to actually say what they're using it for, or to even leave any details about their address or anything like that. I think you literally just have to have an email so that you can be notified what the download link is, and then you can take the data and do with it as you wish. Oops, I'm the wrong way. So the second part is, so that's fine. So you can release this data, and like we've had several presentations today, you can release this data, then it can be hard for people to use. If people can download these data sets, then they would probably have to convert them into a format that's supported by a piece of software, or they may have to put them into a database to then be able to make use of it. And there's some level of expertise in there which goes beyond what a lot of people may be familiar or be able to use. So we've tried to provide another avenue for people to be able to easily develop web mapping, for example, which is OS Open Space. Technically, it was available before Open Data, but includes the same data sets with the addition of the 150,000 mapping set. So it's a toolkit that's available for free, and it's used for people to be able to put a Google-type Slippy map inside their applications. So it's based on a product called OpenLayers. So the OSGeo guys who are here today at this conference, it uses one of their technology pieces, and it's been adapted to be able to connect to our tile service. So as you pan zoom across, it connects to our tile service and loads new tiles in. And so because it uses OpenLayers, for those that are familiar with it, then it can use all the functionality that comes with that. So you can place markers, and you can connect to all manner of services. Okay, so these are basically saying that you can have all these different data sets available. You don't have to include them all, but if you zoom through the stack of your application, then you go through basically different products. I'll say this is the one that you have in addition to all the open data sets within Open Space. Okay, but what the other benefit that comes with it is that you're able to work with the boundary data. So as part of the API or part of the toolkit, you could easily connect data which relates to boundaries. So if you have an XML file, for example, or a CSV file that has wards or what we've got, boroughs, and some form of data against them, then you can easily display that inside Open Space as a thematic map, for example. Much more easier than figuring out how to do it yourself. You would have to download the boundaries, you would have to store those, you would have to serve them to your application, and then you would have to learn how to connect that up. So it's a little bit more complex. So the toolkit enables that to be done a bit more easily. Like I already mentioned, there's the gazetteer available, and we have to search by code point. Just to sort of illustrate that, these are the kind of things you can do with the toolkit. A lot of it is inherited from OpenLayers. And so this sort of things, so you can end up putting a map inside their web page or inside their blog, or at least making a web map available.